Hi guys, my name is Sean. I'm a houseplant enthusiast in Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm here with Jonno and we are in Singapore. His Instagram is going to be somewhere down below. So I am touring Jonno's secret growing facility. It's actually downstairs. We're in the rainy rooftop currently, where he's going to show us his top 5 Anthuriums. And we're going to be talking about how he sells Anthurium a bit differently from other Anthurium sellers that we've featured here on this channel. And I might ask him a little bit about Anthurium tips. So let's just get this started.
Okay. All right, 2 things before we get started. I'm actually editing this episode now, and I realized we forgot to mention that I actually went inside his little greenhouse. It's like in a warehouse, completely indoors with really amazing climate control. Imagine just walking into this like warehouse and seeing rows of like large Anthurium mother plants, and there's like misters going on, and then like there's temperature control and all that good stuff. But Jonno does not allow filming or photography at his secret growing facility, so we won't be able to see that. In this episode, he's pulled out 5 of his favorite Anthuriums to talk about them. And in the episode, he will explain that he's actually an Anthurium purist. He's on the hunt for that textbook Anthurium that has the typical look. When you mention, for example, an Anthurium forgetii or an Anthurium veitchii, this is what everybody imagines their shape to look like. So that is what he's looking out for. And he also only propagates by cutting, and he has a very systemic barcoding system, so all his sold Anthuriums are traceable to the original source. And the second thing I want to mention is that during filming, it was actually raining super hard, and this is what the actual original clip sounded like.
This is one of the more desirable hybrids. It's definitely stood the test of time.
Okay, so I've actually used AI technology to take out most of the rain sound. This is why you hear crisp and clear vocals from both of us. But during filming, it was super loud. So if you hear me yelling, that's me yelling over the rain, not because I was yelling at Jonno, and certainly not yelling at you guys. But I want to applaud Jonno for keeping such a good composure during his explanation, because it was really loud at the time. And actually during the filming, I could not basically hear what he was saying most of the time because it's just so loud. But this is a wonderful episode, so let's get started.
Hi, I'm Jonathan, more commonly known as Jonno. My Instagram handle is therewilding.co, and my full-time job is as a restaurateur, and plants are my passion and now also like a side hustle for me. So I didn't start with aroids. I actually started about more than a decade ago growing edibles, and then I transitioned to other things. I started growing ornamental plants, foliage plants, and then eventually I settled on aroids. Started with monsteras, philodendrons, alocasias, but then over time I realized that what I was most interested in was Anthuriums. So that has become my main focus right now. I still maintain a collection of other plants from different genera, but I would say Anthuriums make up about 80% of what I grow.
Picked out 5 Anthuriums that you're going to show us today. Tell us about them and why they were selected.
Okay, so these are my 5 favorite Anthuriums. It was hard to narrow it down to just 5, but I think these 5 have really stood the test of time in terms of my love for them. And then the first one would be this one over here. So this one would be Circus Peanuts. It also has another name called Mike's Goliath. And the reason for that is because it is a hybrid created by Michael Bush from Selby Botanical Gardens. And then obviously it was called Mike's Goliath because it managed to attain a really large size. But it also has a very unique inflorescence. It's a very beautiful inflorescence. But what's unique about it is that it has a very distinct aroma that is similar to Circus Peanuts, which is a very old candy from the United States. The inflorescence from Circus Peanuts is most pronounced in the early hours of the day. It tends to dissipate by noon. And I think that it's become so iconic that it's more commonly referred to now as Anthurium Circus Peanuts. This one would be Anthurium Ace of Spades. This is one of the more desirable hybrids. It's definitely stood the test of time. It has a very complicated story, but this was created originally by a guy called Tom Fennell Jr., who owned a nursery called the Orchid Jungle. And he passed a handful of seeds to Dennis Rodolante of Silver Chrome Gardens. And from those seeds, what grew out, one of them became the Ace of Spades. So the Ace of Spades that we see today is largely originated from Silver Chrome Gardens, which is now run by his son, Bill Rodolante. So this is a hybrid of unknown parentage, because even Tom Fennell Jr. didn't know it himself either.
And I want to add that usually we see these in smaller forms. We see the smaller version, but this is what they get as they get big.
Yes.
Is this the maximum size?
I think it's close to, but I think it can get a little bit bigger.
And this is the thing about you. I mean, we're not allowed to show your entire collection, but I was just down there. Everything is big. It's huge and enormous.
Next on my list would be Anthurium Red Crystallinum. So this itself is also a hybrid or a cultivar. Obviously it has crystallinum in it, but what actually went into giving it this strong reddish hue, no one really knows. But right now in the market, you would see Anthurium Red Crystallinum from 3 primary sources, which would be NSE Tropicals, Silver Chrome Gardens, and Tazula plants. But all the red crystallinum can be traced back to a guy named Tim Anderson, who started working on this with his Wonder Boy project. Yes. So all the red crystallinum that we see in the market today, even the ones like the Michelles and the Zaras from Dot Block, they all can be traced back to Tim Anderson's Wonder Boy. So as you've noticed that I have actually given a brief background story on the 3 hybrids that I've just presented, and this is one of the things that's really important to me when I purchase a plant, especially if it's a hybrid, that there is a story attached to it, so that when it goes into my collection, that it feels more complete. That it's not just adding another plant, but there's actually something about it that I can share with others. So we've come to the end of the hybrids. The next one is a species, but an undescribed species called morona. So this is Anthurium species morona. So morona is basically just a placeholder name for the locality in which it was first collected from. And this is one of my favorite strap-leaf Anthuriums, because it has a very, very distinct ruffled pattern across the edging. So I really like this one. I don't know how big it can go, because I don't think that this is particularly popular in collections, but it's something that I've been growing out for a few years, and I'm very excited to see how much bigger I can push it. And then finally, we have the Anthurium veitchii. So I would say that this is the plant that first made me fall in love with Anthuriums, and it is the Anthurium with which I have had the longest love affair. This particular form is what they call the super narrow. It actually has 2 other forms. One would be the standard or the wide form. The other is the narrow form, and then the last one is the super narrow. So I think the super narrow is the most sought after form, and it's also the one that you see here. Yeah. So it's called the super narrow because of its very intense and narrow ribbing. Yeah.
So Jonna, I was downstairs in your growing facility earlier, and all of the Anthuriums are flowering profusely, but you say you don't hybridize. Why is that?
Okay, so the main reason I don't hybridize is because it's not what I really want to sell. There are enough people out there making seedlings and hybrids. I sell the way I want to buy. And the reality is that, anything that is bought as a seedling is a gamble. And I think that, as a collector, I like to buy cuttings of clones, specific clones of either species or hybrids that I like. So it's what I offer. I have a fairly extensive collection of plants that I'm very I love very much and I'm very proud of. So I tend to take divisions from them so that I can offer small clones of my own plants to collectors. So obviously these will be slightly higher priced because they are not a gamble, but same thing, because I don't buy as many seedlings, so I don't feel a particular impetus to make seedlings as well.
Do you have any secret care tips specifically for Anthuriums?
Oh, I have plenty.
Okay,
I have
awesome.
plenty. I mean, obviously, a lot of them would remain a secret. So I think a lot of growers make the mistake whereby they start investing in, fancy fertilizers or the latest and greatest products, be it, plant nutrients or supplements or rooting inoculants. But the reality is that if the other factors are not being addressed in terms of the temperature, the humidity, the water, the oxygen, and the light, nothing you do from the nutrition standpoint is going to have any kind of positive net effect on your plant's health. The physical environment plays a very large role. So when we talk about your light exposure, your humidity, and your temperature, the humidity is mostly to do with how the plant is behaving from a health standpoint. Is it transpiring too much? Is it wilting or is it rigid? But your temperature and your light exposure have very, very direct effects on how your plants look. Whether the colors come out strong, whether the colors come out muted, whether the plant is growing fast or slow, and the rate at which the leaves upsize, or are they actually downsizing or maintaining a fixed size. So I would say that in terms of secret care tips, mess around with your...
Interesting. Now, I was just interviewing someone in China who confessed that for dark leaf Anthuriums, lower temperature equates to darker leaf. True or false?
True to a certain extent. So you want it to be low so that you want to be low enough so that the plant isn't under heat pressure or heat stress, because that is very likely to cause the colors to come out quite muted, but not so low that it retards plant growth.
Okay.
Yeah, so there is a sweet spot where the plant is growing at a reasonable pace, but still able to preserve coloration.
Awesome. Can you share with us really quickly the sweet spot? What is it, roughly?
The sweet spot would be between 20 to 25 degrees Celsius.
Wow, that is like lower than most of our tropical outdoor growing conditions. So they're better indoors in our tropical environment.
Contrary to popular belief, Anthuriums can do fantastic indoors, especially if your outdoor environment tends to experience temperature spikes.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of plot growers swear by outdoor growing because Mother Nature does so much of the heavy lifting for them.
Yeah.
But indoor growers can take comfort in the fact that it is very likely that while your plants might not grow as rapidly as outdoor grown plants, they are very likely going to come out more aesthetically pleasing.
Okay. And one of the things that people are most afraid of with Anthuriums is that they require super high humidity. What do you think is the bare minimum percentage of humidity for Anthurium? Because let me add some more before I let you answer. Because I've noticed that for me, I've pushed them to a boundary where they're in an air-conditioned room, and somehow those are doing fantastic. So is it like a myth that they actually need super, super crazy high humidity?
So it is a partial myth. So when you look at humidity, that is only half the equation. The other half of the equation would be temperature. Mm-hmm. And when combined and looked at as a whole, temperature and humidity would give you something called the vapor pressure deficit. So that would be a much stronger indicator of the physical environment that your plant is growing in. For example, when the temperature is higher, a plant will transpire more. So in order to offset that, you require higher humidity so that there is a greater amount of pressure in the air. But conversely, if you grow in a cooler environment, for example, an air-conditioned environment, and you are running at about maybe 20 degrees Celsius, you can actually get away with a slightly lower humidity because the plant is not transpiring as much. So if you look at a VPD chart, you can actually find the point at which your temperature and your relative humidity intersect, and that number would be your VPD number for that environment.
Interesting. That's something for some of you guys to read up. Before I let you go, I know that you're obsessed with your potting media, and I did look through your collection. They're growing fantastic. They're growing huge. Could you share us a little bit about your potting media?
Okay, so before we get into that, I just want to explain that as proud as I am of the potting mix that I've created, the truth is that most plants can grow in almost any kind of potting mix, provided that it reasonably provides the plant with adequate amounts of water and oxygen. So as long as your mix is not overly soggy or not overly dry and porous, most plants can grow reasonably well in them. So my mix is a mixture of orchid bark, perlite, tree fern fiber, sometimes cocoa chips if I want to create something more economical, and some pumice. What goes into it? There is really no single ingredient that is a must-have. The reality is that, for example, if I were to substitute the orchid bark with leca, or I were to use only perlite instead of a mixture of pumice and perlite, the plant is going to be fine. So all these are just components that come together to form a composition that behaves the way that I want. So my mix is very predictable to me.
Okay.
And when I say that plants can grow in just about anything, I tend to tell people to look at hydroponics. Hydroponics has grown practically every genre of plants on the planet, and they all use the same growing media, which is water. So that is basically empirical proof that plants can grow in anything as long as you provide it with adequate amounts of water and oxygen.
All right, I guess I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, Jonno. And I guess I will see you guys in the next episode. Reach out, the Instagram is going to be somewhere on here. Reach out to Jonno if you have any questions, or if you're looking to get into, I don't know, some really intensely beautiful forms of Anthuriums, you can reach out to him as well. And I guess I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for watching this all the way to the very end. Thank you, Jonno, again for this amazing explanation, amazing tour. And I want to let you guys know that next week we have a different kind of Anthurium episode. We visit Mr. Chandra's nursery here in Indonesia, and completely opposite from Jonno, he is not a purist. He is very interested in finding unique traits. So he's like buying up a lot of seedlings, he's creating a lot of hybrids, and he's on the lookout for new shapes, forms, and of course variegations. Of course, there's different ways to play the Anthurium game, and it's amazing to be able to see both of these kinds of growers that are experienced and passionate. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. And don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff.